Close your eyes. Imagine you're standing on the marble steps of an ancient academy in Athens, roughly 360 BCE. The air is warm, thick with the scent of olive groves and the distant murmur of the Aegean Sea. Inside those cool stone halls, a man sits, his quill poised over a scroll. This is Plato. He is not writing a history textbook, he is crafting a mirror for humanity. He is about to conjure a world that will haunt our collective consciousness for the next 2.5 millennia. He is about to speak of Atlantis. We often think of Atlantis as a place, a physical island of gold, bronze and mystery, resting somewhere beneath the crushing depths of the Atlantic. But the truth is far more elusive. Before it was a sunken empire, it was an idea. It was a warning whispered in the halls of philosophy, a fable born from the intersection of memory, legend, and the biting critique of human ambition. Why does a story about a civilization that may never have existed continue to exert such an gravitational pull on our minds? Why do we spend our lives scanning satellite maps and diving into the abyssal plains, hoping to find the ruins of a city that Plato might have invented over dinner? The answer lies not in the geography, but in the psychology of who we are. We are a species that loves to build, and we are a species that lives in constant, quiet fear of falling. Tonight, we aren't just telling a story, we are excavating the layers of a myth. We will travel back to a time when history and allegory were woven into the same fabric. We will walk the circular canals of a city that stood as the pinnacle of human achievement, and we will witness the moment where hubris, that fatal human flaw, tore the foundations of that civilization asunder. Think of this journey as a meditation on the rise and inevitable twilight of empires. As we go deeper into the archives of the past, I want you to let the world around you fade away. The hum of modern technology, the pressures of your daily life, let them drift like mist over the ocean. You are here, in the quiet, in the dark, and in the company of the greatest mystery in history. The story begins in Egypt, in the temple archives of Sais, where ancient priests allegedly shared a secret with the Athenian lawgiver Solon. A tale of a landmass beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a land larger than Libya and Asia combined, a world that commanded the seas before vanishing in a single catastrophic day and night. But was it a memory, or was it a mirror? As we begin this exploration, remember that every great civilization tells a story about its own beginning and its own inevitable end. Atlantis is the ghost of that story, a spectre that reminds us of the fragility of power and the permanence of human longing. The channel's Sleepy History with Kevin is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. To understand Atlantis, we must first unlearn our modern perception of a lost city. Forget ruins buried in silt or fragmented pottery. In the vision presented by Plato, Atlantis was a marvel of architectural harmony, a masterclass in urban planning that seemed to defy the primitive constraints of the ancient world. It was designed not merely as a habitat, but as a monument to its own magnificence. Imagine an island, vast and sprawling, sitting comfortably beyond the Pillars of Hercules. At its centre lay a plain, fertile and lush, shielded from the harsh northern winds by mountain ranges that were, in the eyes of the ancients, the highest and most beautiful in the world. But the true genius of Atlantis did not lie in its mountains. It lay in its water. The city was built upon a series of alternating rings. Imagine a central island, roughly 5.5 miles in diameter, surrounded by 3 concentric rings of water, separated by circular bands of land. These weren't just canals, they were engineering conduits. The Atlanteans carved tunnels through these landmasses, wide enough for their grand triremes to pass through, effectively creating a subterranean highway for ships that allowed the city to be accessed from any point on the outer sea. The walls of these rings were shielded in precious materials. The outermost wall was coated in brass, shining like the reflection of fire. The middle wall was bathed in tin, a cool, shimmering silver hue. But the innermost wall, the one surrounding the Acropolis itself, was plated with orichalcum, a mysterious ruddy metal that glowed with a fire-like intensity, said to be second in value only to gold. Water was the lifeblood of this civilization. Two distinct springs fed the central island, one of cold water and one of warm. Through ingenious irrigation, the Atlanteans channeled these streams into basins, creating baths, fountains and pools for the nobility, the public, and even the livestock. They harnessed the thermal energy of the earth itself, demonstrating a level of environmental mastery that felt, even in Plato's time, like something out of a dream. The architecture was not merely aesthetic, it was defensive and hierarchical. Bridges spanned the rings of water, adorned with towers and gates. Every street was a testament to the island's wealth, reflecting the bounty of their mines and the expertise of their craftsmen. They grew crops twice a year, nourished by the generous seasonal rains and the intricate network of canals that managed the flow of water with mathematical precision. Yet as we walk through these imaginary streets, observe the people. They were governed by a structure that mirrored the geometry of their city, organized, centralized, and powerful. They were not a people of chaos, they were a people of order. And yet this very order, this obsession with perfection, would eventually become the shadow that darkened their brilliance. As the sun sets over the golden spires of their city, consider the weight of such an achievement. They had conquered the sea, mastered the stone, and woven the earth into a design of their own making. But in this stillness, in this quiet contemplation of their power, one cannot help but notice the silence of the horizon. It is the silence of a world that thinks it has mastered time itself, unaware that time is the only thing that cannot be conquered. The glory of Atlantis was not merely found in its stone and bronze, but in the lineage of those who walked its halls. According to the account, the island was the chosen domain of Poseidon, the god of the sea. It was here that he found Plato, a mortal woman, and together they transformed the island into a sanctuary, carving it into the concentric rings we spoke of earlier. Poseidon divided the island into 10 portions, bestowing each upon one of his 10 sons. The eldest, Atlas, was granted the greatest and most noble portion, becoming the high king of the entire realm. From this divine origin sprang a political system that was both a marvel of governance and a seed of future discord. The 10 kings were bound by the laws of Poseidon, inscribed upon a pillar of orichalcum that stood in the centre of the city. These laws were not mere suggestions, they were the sacred compact of the civilization. Once every 5 or 6 years, the kings would gather to sacrifice a bull, using its blood to purify the pillar and swear their oaths. They met in the sanctuary to deliberate on matters of state, to judge one another, and to ensure that no king overstepped his bounds into the territory of his brother. There was a profound sense of duty in these early years. The kings were not merely rulers, they were stewards of a divine legacy. They understood that their power was an extension of the god who had raised the island from the sea. This creates a fascinating image for the mind to settle upon. A council of leaders, bound by ancient ritual, governing a vast empire with a steady, measured hand. But consider the weight of such a system. The kings held absolute power within their own domains, yet they were held accountable by the memory of the law. They were, in a sense, a perfect microcosm of what a civilization should be, diverse in their regional roles, yet unified by a central, spiritual core. It was a balance that relied entirely on the humility of the men in power. As the generations passed, however, the divine blood of Poseidon began to dilute the memories of the sacrifice, the reverence for the orichalcum pillar, and the strict adherence to the ancient laws began to fray at the edges. The wealth of the island was immense. They possessed every metal known to man, including the precious orichalcum, which was harvested in vast quantities, and their trade routes stretched across the known world, bringing in riches from distant lands that further fueled their desire for expansion. Imagine the atmosphere in those grand council chambers as the centuries rolled by. The discussions likely shifted from the maintenance of justice to the pursuit of influence. As their ships returned laden with the spoils of distant lands, the kings began to look beyond their own shores, not as protectors, but as conquerors. The peace that had lasted for ages started to feel like a cage. It is a subtle shift, the moment when a civilization stops looking inward at its own virtues and starts looking outward at the possessions of others. The legacy of Poseidon was meant to be a foundation of strength, but in the hands of mortal kings it became a justification for dominance. They grew powerful, they grew restless, and they grew hungry. And in that hunger, the first cracks appeared in the foundation of the world. For ages, the Atlanteans lived in a state of grace, their hearts aligned with the wisdom of the divine laws. They were moderate, honourable, and possessed a quiet strength, but wealth, as history so often warns us, has a way of dulling the sharpness of the spirit. As the island grew richer, as their ships brought more gold and rare artefacts to their harbours, a slow, imperceptible change began to take hold. It started with the dilution of their divine blood, with each generation the mortal element, the desire for more, the thirst for glory, the need to be the envy of the world, began to overshadow the divine temperance of their ancestors. The orichalcum that was once a sacred symbol of their duty to the gods became, over time, merely a currency to be traded and a trophy to be displayed. They became obsessed with expansion. The horizon, once a boundary of their peaceful domain, now became a challenge to be conquered. They saw the lands beyond their shores, the Mediterranean, the Aegean, the coasts of the known world, not as neighbours, but as resources. Their military might, once designed for the preservation of their islands, was transformed into an engine of imperialism. They grew arrogant. They began to believe that their technological prowess, their mastery over the tides and the earth, made them untouchable. They stopped consulting the wisdom of the ancestors. They stopped the ritual sacrifices at the pillar of orichalcum. The unity that had been their greatest strength began to crumble as the 10 kings, once bound by brotherhood, turned their eyes toward each other with suspicion and competition. To an observer in that era, the decline would have been invisible. If you had walked the streets of their capital, you would have seen nothing but prosperity. The markets were overflowing, the architecture was more grand than ever, and the arts were flourishing. But beneath the surface, the moral fibre of the civilization was fraying. The pride of the Atlantean soul had become its greatest liability. Think of this as the internal rot of an empire. When a society begins to value material abundance above the health of its collective conscience, it enters a state of fragility that no wall of brass or bridge of stone can protect. They were a civilization at the zenith of their power, yet they were spiritually hollow. As we look at their story, we are forced to confront a universal truth. Greatness is not measured by the height of our towers or the breadth of our influence, but by the weight of our character. The Atlanteans forgot that they were stewards of a gift, not owners of the world. And in their ignorance, they set the stage for a reckoning that would wash away the memory of their arrogance in a single thunderous moment. All stories on this channel, Sleepy History with Kevin, are fictional, thoughtfully crafted around historical themes and inspired by real events, figures, and periods, reimagined for engaging storytelling. The thirst of the Atlantean kings was no longer satisfied by their own vast territories. Like a wildfire driven by shifting winds, their ambition turned toward the Mediterranean. They sought to subjugate all the nations within the Pillars of Hercules, including the lands of North Africa and Europe. It was an era of unchecked expansion, a time when the roar of the Atlantean war machine threatened to swallow the light of the ancient world. However, there was one obstacle to their total domination: ancient Athens. In Plato's account, this early iteration of Athens was not the city of marble and philosophy we recognize, but a beacon of resilience, discipline, and virtue. It was the champion of the weak and the defender of the common good. Imagine the scene: the grand, ornate fleets of Atlantis, bristling with soldiers and exotic weapons, crossing the boundaries of the known world to reach the shores of the Mediterranean. They arrived with the certainty of gods, expecting the surrounding nations to crumble under the sheer weight of their presence. And indeed many did, but Athens stood firm. What followed was not just a military engagement, but a collision of two fundamentally different ways of existing. On one side, the Atlanteans, fueled by the desire for conquest and the arrogance of their material wealth. On the other, the Athenians, driven by a profound commitment to the survival of freedom and the preservation of order. The conflict was brutal, not in its imagery, but in its significance. It was the struggle of the spirit against the shadow. The Athenians, though vastly outnumbered, possessed a clarity of purpose that their adversaries had long since abandoned. They fought with a tenacity born from the knowledge that they were not defending mere territory, but the very principles of civilization itself. This is where the story shifts from a chronicle of greed to a parable of resistance. It is a reminder that when the tides of power rise to overwhelm us, it is our internal convictions, our sense of justice and duty that serve as the final ramparts against the storm. As we navigate through these historical echoes, if you find yourself drawn into the mystery of these lost times, consider supporting the work we do here. If this journey into the past provides you with a moment of peace or a spark of curiosity, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. By joining our community, you help ensure that we can continue to bring these stories of history, legend and philosophy to your screen, one chapter at a time. Your support is the bridge that allows us to travel further into the annals of the unknown. The conflict reached a fever pitch, a moment where the balance of history teetered on the edge of a blade. The Atlanteans had pushed their luck, their pride, and their resources to the limit. They did not realize that by pushing against the world, they were eventually going to reach the limits of nature itself. The earth was watching, and the sea, the domain of their divine ancestor, was beginning to turn against its own children. It is said that the gods do not act in haste, but when they do, the earth itself seems to hold its breath. The arrogance of the Atlantean kings had reached a pinnacle that defied the natural order. They believed that by bending the geography of their island to their will, they had become masters of the cosmos. But in their hubris, they had forgotten one essential truth. The earth is not a possession, it is a host. It began with a subtle tremor, a low vibration that rose from the very heart of the tectonic plates beneath their golden cities. The citizens of Atlantis, accustomed to the stability of their high-reaching towers and the predictability of their canal systems, perhaps dismissed it at first as a mere whisper of the elements. But the whisper quickly deepened into a roar. Plato describes it as a single catastrophic day and night. It was not a long, drawn-out war or a slow decay of resources. It was a swift, overwhelming reclamation. Violent earthquakes, unprecedented in their intensity, tore through the landscape. The concentric rings of Earth, the pride of their engineering, began to fracture. The grand bridges that connected the city to the outer sea collapsed, turning the marvels of construction into piles of twisted debris. Then came the sea. The waters that had served their trade, fueled their economy, and defined their identity, turned into an unstoppable wall of liquid destruction. It did not rise as a slow tide. It surged as a force of nature, a deluge that swallowed the landmasses whole. The very ground that had once been the envy of the world, the forests, the temples, the houses of the wealthy, and the sanctuaries of the kings, was pulled down into the freezing dark abyss. Imagine the sudden silence that followed, where there was once the noise of commerce, the bustling of thousands, and the pride of an empire. There was now only the rhythmic, uncaring movement of the waves. The pillars of Hercules, which had served as the gateway to their ambition, now looked upon an empty horizon. The civilization that had claimed to be a world unto itself had been reduced to a myth in the space of a heartbeat. The most chilling aspect of this account is the completeness of the loss. There were no survivors to tell the tale, no remnants of a golden age left for future archaeologists to easily find. It was as if history itself had decided that the story of Atlantis was one that needed to be erased, leaving behind only the echo of a name. As we visualize this destruction, consider the nature of memory. When a society falls, it leaves behind artifacts, writings and monuments, but when an entire civilization is swallowed by the ocean, all that remains is the story. The truth of what happened on that day remains hidden, protected by the crushing pressure of the deep sea. It serves as the ultimate reminder of our own transience. We build, we strive, we define our greatness through our reach, but the earth remains the final arbiter of our time. For centuries, the question has burned brighter than any flame. If Atlantis existed, where did it go? The map of our world is well charted, scanned by satellites, and probed by sonar, yet the mystery of that lost island remains a siren song for explorers, dreamers, and historians alike. When Plato spoke of a land beyond the Pillars of Hercules, he provided a compass, but one that points toward a vast unknown expanse. The search for the physical Atlantis is a study in human obsession. Some have turned their eyes to the Mediterranean, looking for a historical template for the legend. Could Atlantis be the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete, shattered by the volcanic eruption of Thera? The timeline is different. The geography is imperfect, yet the parallels are undeniable. A sophisticated maritime culture, advanced for its time, abruptly changed by a cataclysmic natural event. It is a compelling theory, one that grounds the myth in the tangible tragedy of a real people. Others have cast their gaze much further. Some theorists point to the Azores, a chain of volcanic islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, suggesting that they are the jagged peaks of a sunken continent. They argue that the vast mountain ranges beneath the Atlantic surface are the submerged foundation of the lost realm. To look at the maps of the Atlantic seafloor is to see a landscape that seems to invite such theories: vast ridges, deep basins, and silent underwater plateaus that stretch into the dark. Then there are those who look to the desert. The Richat structure in Mauritania, a massive circular geological feature visible even from space, has captivated the modern imagination. With its concentric rings and vast size, it mirrors the description Plato gave of the capital city. Is it a coincidence, or a geological echo of the story that shaped the Western mind? While geologists point to natural erosion and volcanic activity to explain its shape, it remains a focal point for those who cannot help but see the fingerprints of the ancient architects in the dust of the Sahara. Every corner of the globe has been interrogated. Antarctica, the Caribbean, the coast of Spain, even the North Sea, each has been put forward as the true site of the lost civilization. The sheer volume of these theories tells us less about the geography of Atlantis and more about the geography of the human heart. We want Atlantis to be real because if it is real, then the story is a warning about the past. If it is a myth, it is merely a story about the human condition. As we drift through these possibilities, notice how the story changes shape to fit the terrain. The mystery is a chameleon. It adapts to our technological age, using satellite imagery just as it once adapted to the philosophical discourse of the Greeks. We are not just looking for a city, we are looking for evidence that the past can reach out and touch the present. We are looking for a bridge between what we know and what we have forgotten. Whatever the truth may be, the search itself has become a legacy. It has driven marine archaeology, forced us to map the deepest parts of our oceans, and compelled us to study the volatile history of our own planet. Atlantis may be lost, but in the effort to find it, we have discovered much about the world we live in today. We are left with a question that feels like an echo. Is it possible for a place to be both nowhere and everywhere at the same time? While generations of dreamers have chased the ghosts of Atlantis across the oceans, there have always been voices of calm, steady reason. Among the most prominent was Aristotle, Plato's own student. In the halls of the Lyceum, he looked upon the grand tale of the sunken kingdom, not with wonder but with a critical, analytical eye. Aristotle, the father of logic, could not reconcile the narrative with the observed world. He famously suggested that the man who conjured Atlantis, his own mentor, had simply caused it to vanish. implying it was a philosophical construct rather than a historical coordinate. This is the tension that has defined the study of Atlantis for over 2 millennia, the battle between the mythic imagination and the empirical record. Aristotle and later Roman thinkers like Tacitus often ignored the Atlantis story, not because they were unaware of it, but because it didn't fit into their systematic view of history, geography, and political power. To them, the lack of corroborating evidence from other sources was a deafening silence. Why would a civilization so vast, so powerful, and so advanced leave no trace in the records of the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, or any of the other great seafaring nations of antiquity? The skeptics argue that the story is an allegory, a sophisticated thought experiment designed to illustrate the rise and fall of political states and the inherent corruptibility of human power. In this light, the sinking of the island is not a geological event, but a moral punctuation mark at the end of a long philosophical argument about justice and temperance. Yet, even in the face of this skepticism, the story refuses to fade. Perhaps it is because we need the story to be true. Perhaps we find comfort in the idea that there was once a golden age of knowledge, even if it ended in tragedy. Or maybe the skeptics and the dreamers are looking at two sides of the same coin. The skeptic sees a fable, the dreamer sees a history, but both see the same human reflection in the water. If you find yourself enjoying this deep dive into the shadows of history, I invite you to become a more active part of our exploration. If this narrative has helped you unwind or has sparked a new interest in the mysteries of our past, please consider leaving a comment below with your own thoughts. Do you view Atlantis as a real place lost to time, or as an eternal cautionary tale? Your engagement helps shape the direction of our future stories and allows us to build this sanctuary of history together. Every subscription and every like is a brick in the foundation of this channel. We continue to walk the thin line between evidence and inspiration as we look deeper into how the medieval and modern worlds interpreted this tale. We start to see that Atlantis is not a static memory, but a living one. It grows and changes, mirroring the fears and aspirations of every generation that encounters it. The question is no longer just about where Atlantis was, but about why it keeps reappearing in our consciousness, like an island rising from the depths, whenever our own world faces its own uncertain horizons. For centuries, Atlantis remained largely a scholarly curiosity, a footnote in the dialogue of philosophers. But as the world moved into the Age of Enlightenment and beyond, something shifted. The map was filling up. The edges of the world were being charted, and yet the desire to find a lost origin only intensified. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Atlantis underwent a metamorphosis. It was no longer just a Greek fable. It became a mirror for the anxieties and technological dreams of the modern age. Writers and poets began to paint Atlantis not as a cautionary tale of hubris, but as a lost utopia, a civilization that possessed advanced technologies, telepathic powers, and energy sources that we are only just beginning to dream of today. This is where the myth truly became immortal. By decoupling Atlantis from the strict framework of Plato's moral lesson, the world turned it into a canvas for our own potential. Think of how we portray Atlantis today. In our collective imagination, it is a city of translucent domes, bioluminescent energy, and harmonious existence with the sea. This shift reflects our own deep-seated hope that progress does not have to end in destruction. We want to believe that there was a time, or could be a place, where power and wisdom existed in perfect equilibrium. This modern vision of Atlantis is also a direct reaction to the rapid pace of our own civilization. As we push the boundaries of what is possible, reaching for the stars, splitting the atom, and encoding our world into digital signals, we look back at the idea of a lost, advanced civilization with a mixture of envy and fear. We wonder, if they had it all and still lost it, what does that say about us? The myth has become a constant companion to our scientific exploration. Even as oceanographers map the abyssal plains and geologists study the movement of the Earth, the spectre of Atlantis remains. It is the ghost in the machine of our progress. It reminds us that no matter how advanced our tools become, the fundamental laws of nature and the fundamental flaws of the human heart remain unchanged. This is why the story continues to captivate us. Whether we are reading a classic novel, watching a cinematic interpretation, or simply looking out at the vast, dark expanse of the ocean at night, the idea of the lost city feels inherently true. It feels like a memory that we haven't quite reached yet. It is the promise that there is more to human history than just the records we have kept. As we drift further into the history of this idea, ask yourself, why are we so desperate to believe in a lost golden age? Is it because we feel that we are losing our own sense of wonder, or is it because we are looking for a roadmap to a better future? Atlantis exists in the space between what we know and what we hope, a bridge built of myth that spans the distance between our humble beginnings and our uncertain destiny. Why does the human spirit refuse to let Atlantis die, even when science presents cold, hard facts, even when logic tells us that the island is a metaphor, the image of the golden city remains? This is not a failure of education or a lack of critical thinking. It is a fundamental feature of the human psyche. We are, by our very nature, storytellers who live in a world that often feels chaotic and incomplete. Atlantis provides us with something that history books struggle to offer, a sense of narrative symmetry. We want to believe that there is a grand pattern to our existence, that empires rise and fall for reasons that possess a deeper, perhaps even poetic logic. The story of a civilization destroyed by its own pride is a mirror held up to every great power in history. It suggests that our current achievements, as staggering as they may be, are part of a cycle as old as the mountains. There is a profound comfort in this cycle. If civilizations can fall, it means they were once great. If they can be forgotten, it means there is always more to discover. We identify with the struggle of the Atlanteans because, on some level, we feel that same tension in our own lives, the struggle to balance our ambitions with our moral integrity, our desire for progress with our need for peace. This is why, regardless of how much we map the ocean floor, the real Atlantis will always remain just out of reach. It is a construct of our collective yearning. It is the place where all our questions about the past, the future, and our own nature converge. To find the physical ruins would be, in a sense, a disappointment, because it would turn a universal symbol into a finite location. As we continue this long meditative journey through the history of this legend, your presence is what gives this exploration its life. If you have found a quiet sense of reflection or inspiration in these words, I invite you to share this story with someone else who appreciates the beauty of the mystery. Sharing this video is the most powerful way to grow our community of thinkers, dreamers, and seekers. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue to explore these quiet corners of history together. Your support sustains the effort required to craft these stories, allowing us to delve deeper into the forgotten chapters of our shared human experience. Consider the weight of the silence that surrounds us now. We are the inheritors of the stories that have survived the trials of time. Like the priests of Sais who kept the archives of Atlantis, we are the current keepers of this tale. As we move closer to the final reflections on this enigma, hold on to that feeling of wonder. It is the most valuable tool we have for understanding the world. We are not just looking back at a lost island, we are looking inward at the depths of what it means to be human, to strive, to fail, and to endure in the long, quiet watch of history. In the quiet pursuit of understanding the past, we often focus on what we can touch: the pottery shards, the rusted iron, the stone foundations of temples long gone. But there is a different kind of history, a history of ideas that move through time like currents in an ocean. The story of Atlantis serves as one of the most powerful tools in this intellectual archive. It acts as an educational mirror, helping us distinguish between the stories we tell ourselves and the evidence that shapes our reality. When we study the legend of Atlantis, we are essentially learning how to think. We are invited to act as historians examining the ancient texts, as geologists understanding the movement of tectonic plates, and as philosophers questioning the nature of power. This is the true gift of the mystery. It compels us to ask what constitutes proof, how does a legend evolve over time, and most importantly, why does the human mind gravitate so strongly toward tales of lost perfection? By analyzing the claims surrounding this sunken realm, we develop the ability to navigate a world increasingly filled with complex narratives. We learn to weigh evidence, to value peer review, and to understand that a compelling story is not synonymous with an historical fact. These skills, the ability to be critical, curious, and discerning, are perhaps the most valuable outcomes of our search for the lost city. This journey is a reminder that education does not always come from textbooks alone. It comes from the engagement with our own cultural inheritance. Whether we see Atlantis as a cautionary tale of hubris or as a metaphor for the fragility of civilization, we are participating in a conversation that spans thousands of years. We are connecting with the Athenian scholars, the medieval monks, and the modern researchers who have all looked at the same empty horizon and asked, "What if?" As we reflect on these themes, we also acknowledge the sources of our knowledge. Our understanding is built upon the collective archives of human thought, transformed by the storytelling that keeps these ideas alive across generations. The bridge between the ancient world and our own is not made of gold or stone, but of stories carefully curated and passed down through the quiet chambers of history. This content is inspired by and adapted from public domain works available through Project Gutenberg. The material has been transformed through original narration, editing, and storytelling to create a unique experience for educational and entertainment purposes. As we sit in the quiet of this late hour, the story of Atlantis invites us to look out the window at our own world. We see skyscrapers of glass and steel reaching heights that would have seemed godlike to the ancients. We see our global networks, our instant communication, and our mastery over the resources of the planet. We feel a sense of permanence, a belief that our progress is an upward line that will never be interrupted. But the legend of the sunken kingdom whispers a different truth. It reminds us that every civilization, no matter how vast or sophisticated, exists on borrowed time. The ground beneath our feet is not as solid as it feels. The stability of our global economy, the harmony of our societies, and the longevity of our technological achievements, all of these are, in the grand timescale of the Earth, as fleeting as the foam on a wave. What made Atlantis vulnerable was not the lack of technology, but the loss of equilibrium. They grew disconnected from the limits of their environment and the dictates of their own humanity. They traded their wisdom for vanity and their stewardship for dominance. In our time, we face challenges that are perhaps different in scale, but strikingly similar in spirit. We are grappling with the sustainability of our resources, the complexity of our interconnected systems, and the preservation of our shared values in an age of rapid change. Consider the architecture of our modern life. It is complex, intricate, and beautiful, much like the concentric rings of Atlantis. But every complex system carries its own seeds of vulnerability. A change in the climate, a failure in the networks that bind us, a shift in the moral consciousness of our society, these are the tectonic pressures of our modern era. The story of Atlantis is not a prediction of doom, it is a mirror of responsibility. It asks us, what are the foundations of our world built upon? Are they built on the vanity of temporary power, or on the enduring strength of wisdom, justice, and the stewardship of our planet? To contemplate this is to move beyond the search for a lost island and into the search for our own purpose. We are the keepers of the current golden age. We have the benefit of all the stories that came before us, including the cautionary tale of the city that sank beneath the waves. We have the opportunity to learn, to adjust, and to build something that lasts, not just because it is strong, but because it is wise. As we dwell on these thoughts, let the vastness of time wash over you. We are but a single chapter in a much longer narrative. The ocean that claimed Atlantis is the same ocean that sustains us today. It is a reminder that we are part of a cycle of existence that is far greater, far deeper, and far more mysterious than we can ever fully capture. In this stillness, we find the clarity to appreciate the life we have and the humility to understand the fragile, beautiful gift of being here, right now, in this moment of history. As we move away from the geopolitical warnings of the past, we find that Atlantis has taken on a life of its own in the halls of human creativity. It has become a muse for the artist, a sanctuary for the poet, and a recurring dream for the mystic. If we cannot find the island in the physical world, we have certainly built it within the world of our imagination. Consider how the imagery of a lost, sun-drenched civilization has influenced the visual language of our art, from the Renaissance painters who depicted mythological landscapes as reflections of divine order, to the dreamlike vistas of the Romantic era. Atlantis serves as the ultimate lost paradise. It is the aesthetic embodiment of nostalgia, the deep, aching longing for a home we have never visited and a time we have never known. This is a common thread in the human experience. The drive to recreate a state of perfection that we feel, deep down, has been lost to the fog of history. In the realm of literature, the legend has been repurposed time and again. Authors have used Atlantis as a blank slate, projecting their own societal hopes and fears onto its ruins. Some writers envisioned it as a place of advanced science, where crystals held the power of the sun and airships sailed the skies, a mirror to our own fascination with technological advancement. Others portrayed it as a mystical realm, a place where the barrier between the human and the divine was porous, reminding us of the spiritual dimension that many feel we have sacrificed at the altar of modernization. Why does the human heart require this mythology? It is because facts alone are often insufficient to explain the breadth of our existence. While history provides the what and the when, mythology provides the why. It allows us to process the abstract feelings of loss, the fear of catastrophe, and the hope for rebirth. By externalizing these feelings into the story of a sunken kingdom, we gain a distance that allows us to look at our own flaws and aspirations with a sense of perspective. This has also manifested in our belief systems. For many, the idea of a lost higher civilization is not a tragedy to be mourned, but a promise to be realized. It suggests that there is a dormant potential in humanity, a hidden wisdom waiting to be rediscovered beneath the layers of our current reality. Whether this belief is grounded in historical reality or not is almost beside the point. The fact that it inspires people to search for truth, to question the status quo, and to seek a higher mode of living is its own kind of power. As we observe how the story has changed from a philosophical allegory about greed to a modern myth about cosmic potential, we see the true nature of human culture. We do not just inherit stories, we weave them into the fabric of who we are. Atlantis is a living entity, constantly shedding its old skin and adopting new forms as the tides of time wash over it. It is a mirror that reflects the light of our own evolution. When you look at the paintings of the deep or read the stories of lost civilizations, you are not just consuming art. You're engaging in a dialogue that has been going on since the first words were etched into stone. You are participating in the act of storytelling, which is perhaps the most ancient and enduring of all human technologies. It is how we survive, how we learn, and how we hope. The island may be gone, but the map of the human imagination remains forever etched with its silhouette. We live in an age of unprecedented surveillance. We map the terrain of Mars with greater precision than we map the floor of our own oceans. As we turn our technologies toward the deep, we are not just looking for shipwrecks or submerged ruins, we are probing the vast silent archives of the planet. Every sonar ping, every deep-sea submersible dive is a quiet conversation with the abyss, a place where the story of Atlantis feels, at least for a moment, like a tangible possibility. Think of the abyssal plains, those dark, cold and pressurized regions where light has never penetrated. For the oceanographer, these are sites of tectonic wonder, where the crust of the earth is reborn. For the dreamer, these are the potential resting places of civilizations that vanished before the rise of our own. The tragedy, and perhaps the beauty of our search, is that the ocean is a master of concealment. It takes the grandest of monuments and, over millennia, subjects them to the slow, relentless erosion of currents, salt and sediment. What we often find in these depths are not golden temples, but the sublime indifference of nature. We find hydrothermal vents teeming with life that defies our understanding of biology, mountain ranges that dwarf the Himalayas, and trenches that plunge into the darkness of the mantle. These discoveries are, in their own way, as mythical as anything Plato could have written. They remind us that the earth is a living, breathing entity, constantly reshaping its surface and swallowing the history of those who walk upon it. This scientific pursuit is the modern evolution of the Atlantis legend, where ancient Greeks looked to the horizon and imagined, we look to the sonar screen and measure. Both acts are driven by the same impulse, the refusal to accept that the world ends where our sight stops. We are compelled to know what lies beneath, to fill in the blank spaces of our maps with the narrative of our discovery. But consider this. What if the lost civilization we are searching for isn't a city of brick and mortar, but the lost history of our species' early resilience? As we uncover evidence of ancient sea level changes, of coastal settlements swallowed by the rising tides of the last ice age, we realize that there were in fact real civilizations that disappeared beneath the waves. They were not the grandiose empire of Plato's fable, but they were real, they were human, and their memories were washed away by the literal rising of the seas. In this sense, Atlantis is not a fiction, it is an archetypal memory. It is the collective recollection of a time when the world was volatile and humanity was fragile. We are currently mapping these sunken coastlines, piecing together the timeline of a world that existed before our recorded history. We are in a very real sense finding the Atlantis that actually existed, not in the mythic golden city of our desires, but in the muddy, sediment-rich layers of the continental shelves. As we continue to explore, we must remain humble. The ocean is not a museum waiting to be opened. It is an active, changing environment. Every discovery brings a new question, and every answer reveals how much we have yet to learn. The mystery of the deep is a reminder that our understanding of history is always incomplete, always subject to the tides of new information. We are constantly rewriting the past, adding new chapters to the story of how we became who we are today. What we seek is not just the location of a sunken land, but an understanding of our place in the long geological record of this planet. We are looking for the thread that connects our current civilization to the ones that preceded us, trying to understand how they lived, how they failed, and what they left behind in the silent, dark embrace of the sea. As we traverse the deeper corridors of this legend, we must pause to consider what it is that our modern society projects onto the image of Atlantis. We live in a time of incredible connectivity and technological power, a digital age where information flows as rapidly as the tides. Yet in this age of abundance, there is a pervasive, quiet anxiety, a feeling that we too are balanced on a fragile precipice. Atlantis has become the primary vessel for this collective unease. When we look at the ruins of Atlantis through the lens of modern political discourse, we see a reflection of our own struggle with sustainability. The tale speaks of a nation that possessed everything: advanced resources, unparalleled trade, and the ability to command the seas. Yet they were undone by the same impulses that we struggle with today: the desire for endless expansion, the temptation to place material growth above ecological balance, and the hubris that comes with thinking we have finally tamed the forces of nature. It is fascinating to observe how different generations interpret the fall of the city. In the early 20th century, Atlantis was often depicted through the prism of industrial expansion, a lesson about the dangers of over-mechanization. Today, in our era of climate awareness, the myth takes on a sharper, more urgent resonance. We see the rising sea levels as a tangible living threat, and the story of the flood becomes not just a metaphor for moral failure, but a chilling premonition of our own environmental reality. This is the power of the myth. It is a flexible, living repository of our fears. It allows us to process the complexities of our current geopolitical landscape without needing to name a specific enemy or a specific country. Atlantis is the universal proxy for the empire. It is the symbol of every civilization that has grown too large, too arrogant, or too disconnected from the reality of its own limitations. Consider the political structures of our own world. We see the concentration of power, the influence of global trade, and the fragility of our international institutions. We worry about the same things the inhabitants of Plato's Athens must have worried about. Can a society sustain its values when it gains the power to reshape the world? Can we maintain our humanity when our ambitions transcend our borders? The myth of Atlantis serves as a persistent, low-level warning signal in our cultural background. It challenges us to look at the systems we have built and ask whether they are resilient enough to survive their own success. It forces us to confront the reality that greatness is not an inheritance, but an ongoing task. Every generation must prove that it is worthy of the power it wields. As we move forward, the legend reminds us that the choices we make today, the policies we enact, the technologies we prioritize, and the values we emphasize are the foundations upon which our own future will be built. We are not just living in the present, we are participating in the creation of a history that will one day be studied by those who come after us. The question we must answer is not where is Atlantis, but what kind of legacy are we leaving in our own wake? By viewing Atlantis as a mirror rather than a mystery, we gain a unique perspective on our own times. We become observers of our own civilization, capable of seeing the cracks in the foundation before the walls begin to tremble. This is the ultimate lesson of the sunken city, not that we are destined to fall, but that we have the power to define the terms of our own endurance. We are the authors of our history, and for as long as we possess the wisdom to look back at the lessons of the past, we hold the power to shape the future. History is not a solid, unbroken chain. It is more like a river with many hidden branches, some of which flow into dark subterranean caverns, never to be seen again. We are obsessed with chronology, with dates and dynasties, with the steady accumulation of progress. But Atlantis represents the parts of our past that have slipped through the cracks, the forgotten branches of the human narrative that exist only in the realm of potential. When we speak of the lost civilization, we are essentially acknowledging the vast, uncomfortable gaps in our knowledge. Our written history is a mere blink in the lifespan of the planet. Even if we could recover every scroll, every tablet, and every inscription from antiquity, we would still only be grasping a fraction of what has truly transpired on this earth. There were countless eras, cultures, and ways of life that rose and fell, leaving no more trace than a footprint in the sand before the tide rolls in. Atlantis serves as our anchor in these depths. It is the name we give to the unknowable whenever we feel the vertigo that comes from staring into the abyss of deep time, the millions of years that preceded our civilization. We reach for the myth of Atlantis to ground ourselves. It is a way of saying, there was something there. There was a story, a struggle, a peak of achievement. It allows us to feel that our own history is not an isolated incident, but part of a much larger, more mysterious sequence. Consider the sensation of standing on a shoreline at night. You look out over the vast, dark expanse, and you know that underneath that water lies a world that is ancient, complex, and largely hidden from your view. That is the experience of contemplating history. We are constantly standing on the shore of the past, peering into the dark, and seeing only the reflection of our own expectations. This is why the myth is so enduringly comfortable. It provides a shape for the shapeless. It gives us a protagonist, a city, a people to stand in for all the millions of lives that have been erased by the inexorable passage of time. It allows us to grieve for the lost without needing to name the individual. It is the collective memory of everything we have forgotten. As we continue to reflect on this, Consider the nature of our own legacy. One day, thousands of years from now, our current world will also be a subject of speculation. Our cities of steel, our digital archives, our global networks, they will all face the entropy of time. Will we too become a myth? Will future generations look back at our era and wonder what kind of people we were, what we valued, and why we fell? The Atlantis narrative forces this perspective upon us. It humbles us by showing how easily the grandest achievements can be swept away. It teaches us that the only true permanence lies in the ideas we leave behind, the stories, the values, and the insights that survive when the physical world has long since turned to dust. We are building our own legacy with every action we take today. Whether that legacy becomes a myth or a foundation for the future is something we are deciding in the quiet moments of our daily lives. In this deep, quiet contemplation, we are not just looking back at a legend, we are engaging with the very nature of existence. We are accepting the reality of our fragility, the beauty of our ambition, and the necessity of our stories. Atlantis is not just a place that was, it is a question of what we choose to be, here and now in the time we are given. We are the first generation in human history to possess the capability to record, store, and replicate our entire cultural existence in the digital realm. We are building a massive, interconnected memory for the species. In this context, the fear of losing a civilization, the central haunting anxiety that birthed the legend of Atlantis, takes on a completely new dimension. If we were to face a cataclysm tomorrow, would we leave behind only the fragments, or would we leave behind a complete, searchable, and interpretable mirror of who we were? The Atlantis myth has always been a reflection of the storage capacity of the human mind. For the ancients, the capacity was limited to oral tradition and stone inscriptions, both prone to decay, misinterpretation, and the slow erasure of time. Today, we have moved beyond the fragility of stone and scroll. Yet this brings a new irony. The more we record, the more we struggle to discern what is truly important. We have become experts at preservation, but perhaps we are losing our expertise in synthesis. As we look at the legend, we realize that Plato's account was in a sense, a form of early data preservation. He took a story, whether from Egyptian priests or from his own creative reservoir, and he encoded it into a format that would survive the centuries. He understood that for an idea to live, it must be compelling. It must be a story that people want to pass on. And that is the secret of Atlantis. It is the ultimate example of data that has survived for over 2 millennia, because it was anchored in the emotional and moral core of the human experience. Consider our own digital archives. We are filling the cloud with our thoughts, our wars, our art, and our daily trivialities. We are building a new Atlantis, one that is not made of brass or stone, but of silicon and light. The question for our age is not whether we will be forgotten, but whether we will be understood. Will the future be able to parse the meaning of our sprawling, chaotic digital record? Or will they too look back at us and see a myth, a vague, distorted shadow of a civilization that once thought it had conquered the entropy of time? This reflection reminds us that knowledge is not the same as wisdom. We can store every byte of information we produce, but if we lose the ability to tell the story, the ability to weave these facts into a cohesive moral and human narrative, then we have lost the most important part of our legacy. Atlantis survives because it tells a story about us, about our capacity for greatness and our potential for hubris. It is a lesson that is constantly being refreshed with every retelling. As we move through our own time, we are the architects of the next lost narrative. We are shaping the history that will eventually become the folklore of the future. This is a profound responsibility. It asks us to consider what part of ourselves we want to be remembered. Do we want to be known for the height of our buildings or the depth of our compassion? Do we want to be remembered for the power of our tools or the clarity of our values? The legend of Atlantis, therefore, is not a relic of the past, but a tool for the present. It serves as a reminder that the physical world is, in the end, ephemeral. The only things that truly last are the values we embed into our culture and the truths we pass on to the next generation. We are the storytellers of the modern age, and the story we choose to tell will define how we are seen when the dust finally settles on our own era. We are building the archives that the future will read. Let us make them count. The ocean is often perceived as a vast, uncaring void, a place where things are lost and forgotten, but perhaps in the grand narrative of our planet, it is the opposite. The ocean is the ultimate archive. It holds within its depths the sediment of every era, the trace of every shoreline that has shifted, and the echo of every civilization that has been reclaimed by the rising tide. When we speak of Atlantis, we are essentially speaking of the ocean's ability to absorb the ambitions of humanity and turn them into silence. Think of the pressure at the bottom of the sea, a weight that is both crushing and preserving. It is a place where time slows down, where the frantic pace of terrestrial life is replaced by the slow, rhythmic currents of the abyss. This is where Atlantis resides. Whether as a physical place or as a concept, it has become part of the geological record, woven into the very structure of the planet. It is not just lost, it has been integrated. For those of us who live on the surface, the ocean is a threshold. We stand at the edge of the water and look out, feeling the pull of the unknown. There is something inherently humbling about this connection. We are terrestrial creatures, shaped by the land, yet we are drawn to the water as if by a primal memory. We are drawn to the idea of the sunken city because it represents our own origins, the deep, watery beginning of life itself. The story of Atlantis acts as a bridge between our life on land and the profound mystery of the water. It reminds us that our dominance over the earth is a temporary arrangement. We build our cities, we draw our borders, and we mark our time. But the planet operates on a different scale, a scale of ice ages, tectonic shifts, and the slow, steady movement of the seas. The fall of Atlantis is not an act of malice by the elements, it is the natural consequence of a world that is constantly in flux. As we continue to contemplate this, consider the lessons that the water teaches us. It teaches us the necessity of adaptation. It teaches us that rigidity, the attempt to hold on to power or status against the flow of time, is the surest way to be broken. The Atlanteans, in their pursuit of an unshakable empire, failed to recognize that the only way to endure is to move with the changes, to be as fluid and resilient as the sea itself. This is the deeper, more spiritual dimension of the legend. It is not just a tale of destruction, it is an invitation to let go of our attachment to the permanence of our own creations. We are invited to cultivate a mindset that values growth, adaptability, and the quiet wisdom of recognizing our place within the larger system of life. We are invited to see our existence not as a struggle against the tide, but as a part of it. In the silence of this late hour, as you let these images settle in your mind, imagine the stillness of the ocean floor. There is no urgency there, no conflict, no struggle for dominance. There is only the slow accumulation of history, the quiet settling of the past into the foundation of the future. We are part of that history. Every breath we take, every story we tell, is a small addition to the ongoing narrative of our planet. And in the end, it is not the magnitude of our reach that defines us, but the depth of our connection to the world around us. If we treat the story of Atlantis not as a tragic ending, but as a pedagogical beginning, the entire landscape of our future shifts. We are no longer victims of a cyclical history waiting for the next catastrophe. Instead, we become the active architects of a new kind of endurance. By studying the fall of the Golden City, we are effectively stress testing our own values, asking ourselves which parts of our civilization are worth preserving, and which are merely the vanity of an empire that has lost its way. We often talk about progress as if it were a linear path toward more machines, more data, and more expansion. But the wisdom hidden in the ruins of Atlantis suggests that progress is incomplete without the stabilizing influence of ethics and temperance. A society that grows in intelligence but shrinks in empathy is by definition an unstable structure. We see the echoes of this in our own time, the tension between our immense technical capability and the profound challenges we face in global justice, environmental stewardship, and social cohesion. How do we build a civilization that does not succumb to the arrogance of the Atlantean kings? We do it through the cultivation of long-term thinking. We learn to value the common good over the private spoils of conquest. We recognize that our resources are finite, not just in terms of energy and materials, but in terms of the moral and social capital that binds a community together. We understand that leadership is not a mandate for dominance, but a responsibility of service. The beauty of this perspective is that it turns the myth into a compass. When we face the dilemmas of our modern life, we can ask, is this action building toward a future that can endure, or is it another manifestation of the hubris that led the Golden City to the sea? This is not an abstract exercise, it is the most practical form of wisdom. It allows us to navigate the complexities of our time with a sense of perspective that transcends the immediate pressures of the moment. Think of the legacy we are currently crafting. Each generation stands on the shoulders of the ones that came before, holding the accumulated knowledge of thousands of years. We have the benefit of all the stories, all the lessons, and all the warnings. We have the potential to break the cycle. We don't have to be the civilization that disappears beneath the waves. We can be the civilization that learns to live in harmony with the tides, the land, and the fundamental truths of our existence. This is the promise that keeps the story of Atlantis alive. It is not a tale of a lost location. It is a tale of a found truth. It is the realization that we have the agency to decide our own destiny. We are not just subjects of history, we are its makers. And as we continue to move forward, we carry the memory of the Golden City with us, not as a weight, but as a lantern. It lights our path, warns us of the pitfalls, and reminds us that no matter how dark the depths may seem, the light of human wisdom, when nurtured with humility, can endure the passage of all time. As we dwell on this, consider that every step you take in your own life is an act of construction. You are contributing to the collective narrative of our species. You are proving that we have the capacity to learn from the ghosts of the past and to build something that is not just grand, but good. That is the highest form of success. That is how we ensure that our story, our civilization, will not be remembered as a myth, but as a testament to what we were capable of achieving when we finally chose to value wisdom over gold. If we were to travel to the furthest corners of the globe, to the oral traditions of the Pacific Islanders, the creation myths of the Americas, or the ancient sagas of the Norse, we would find again and again the story of the flood. We would find the tale of a land that was once high and mighty, only to be reclaimed by the water. Why is this narrative so pervasive? It is not because of a single source, but because the flood is a universal experience of the human spirit. It is the language we use to describe the moments when our world, as we know it, comes to an end. This tells us something profound about the human condition. We are all, in essence, survivors of our own personal and collective floods. Every time a society undergoes a radical transformation, a revolution, an economic collapse, or a shift in the environment, the old world dies, and a new one is born from the remnants of the past. Atlantis is the name we give to that old world that we have left behind. It is the repository of our nostalgia and the training ground for our resilience. The fact that this story transcends borders and languages suggests that there is a universal lexicon of myths that we all share. These are not merely stories, they are the intellectual architecture of our species. They provide us with the tools to process the most difficult realities of existence: loss, change, the arrogance of power, and the inevitability of time. When we discuss Atlantis, we are not speaking to one another as citizens of different nations, but as fellow members of a species that has been struggling with these same fundamental questions for millennia. In this light, the search for Atlantis becomes a search for our common ground. We are looking for the shared values that have kept us striving, building and dreaming despite the constant threat of being erased by the tides of time. We are acknowledging that despite our differences, we all share the same anxieties, the same hopes, and the same capacity for self-reflection. We are united by our shared history of survival. This realization brings a strange, quiet peace. If the story of Atlantis is universal, then the responsibility of caring for our world is also universal. It is not the burden of one civilization, one government, or one era. It is the task of every human being who looks at the horizon and feels the pull of the mystery. It is a reminder that we are all on this ship together, navigating the currents of history, and that the success of our voyage depends on our ability to work together, to share our knowledge, and to preserve the wisdom that has been passed down to us. As you reflect on the global resonance of this tale, realize that you are participating in a conversation that has been echoing through the halls of human history for as long as we have had the ability to speak. You are a link in an unbroken chain of storytellers, thinkers, and dreamers who have kept the flame of inquiry alive. The story of Atlantis is not just about what we lost, it is about what we have kept. It is about the persistence of the human spirit in the face of the vast, indifferent expanse of the ocean. We have reached a point in our exploration where the myth is no longer a distance to be travelled, but a depth to be integrated. The island is no longer out there in the fog of the Atlantic. It is in here, in the shared consciousness that defines who we are. We are the keepers of the memory, and as long as we continue to talk, to listen, and to search, the story will never truly be lost. It will continue to evolve, to inform, and to inspire, guiding us through the uncharted waters of our own future. We often imagine history as a closed book, a series of completed chapters that we read with the benefit of hindsight, but we are currently writing the pages that future generations will turn. We are the keepers of the mythos, the architects who define which stories endure and which are discarded to the dust of obscurity. The legend of Atlantis, having survived this long, is a testament to the fact that certain ideas possess a gravitational pull that is stronger than time itself. As we engage with this legend, we must ask ourselves, what kind of legacy are we embedding into the collective consciousness of our descendants? Are we leaving behind only the cold debris of our technological prowess? Or are we passing on the warmth of our curiosity, our ethical struggles, and our deep philosophical questions? Atlantis serves as a bridge, a connecting thread that allows us to communicate with those who have long since vanished, and with those who are yet to be born. Think of the way we curate our knowledge today. We have the unprecedented ability to leave behind a permanent record of our existence, our art, our science, our daily reflections, and our moral debates. Yet the danger lies not in the scarcity of our records, but in their overwhelming density. We risk becoming a civilization that knows everything but understands nothing, a society buried under the weight of its own data. The lesson of Atlantis is that clarity is more important than volume. It is the story that carries the truth, not the database. When future scholars, or perhaps beings we cannot yet fathom, look back at our era, they will not be searching for the exact coordinates of our digital cities. They will be looking for the spirit of the age. They will be asking, what did these people value? What did they fear? What kept them up at night? By embracing the story of Atlantis, we are participating in a timeless dialogue about what it means to be human in a world that is inherently transient. We are contributing to the very mythology that will define us long after our physical presence is gone. This realization should shift the way we view our own daily actions. If we believe that our lives are part of a larger, evolving epic, then every decision becomes meaningful. Every act of kindness, every discovery of science, every moment of genuine reflection is a brick in the foundation of the future. We are not just living for today, we are crafting the myths that will nourish the imagination of those who will stand on our shoulders. As we stand at this juncture, consider the weight of our current potential. We have the tools to solve challenges that would have seemed impossible to our ancestors. Yet we still grapple with the fundamental human flaws that led to the fabled fall of the Golden City. We are the bridge between the mythic past and the technological future. It is a precarious position, but it is also one of immense opportunity. We are the generation that has the chance to prove that we have learned the lesson of the sunken kingdom. The mystery of Atlantis will always be there, just beneath the surface, a reminder of the fragility and the majesty of our existence. It is not something to be solved and filed away. It is something to be carried, a lantern to guide us through the dark. As you look forward, hold on to that sense of wonder. Let it be the motive force for your exploration, for your learning, and for your contribution to the grand narrative of our species. The story is not ending. It is simply entering a new chapter, one that you are actively writing with every breath you take. Across the centuries, the myth of Atlantis has done more than just linger in the pages of books. It has manifested in the very stone and mortar of our world. Whenever a society has sought to build a utopia, a city planned with geometric precision, harmony, and an eye toward the heavens, they have, consciously or not, been chasing the shadow of the Golden City. We see this in the circular designs of Renaissance ideal cities, in the sweeping boulevards of our modern metropolises, and in the architectural obsession with symmetry and light. Why do we keep trying to build Atlantis? It is because the myth provides us with a blueprint for what we consider civilization at its peak. Plato described Atlantis with such vivid detail, the concentric rings of water and land, the towering temples, the orchestration of trade and law, that he planted an aesthetic seed in the human mind. We crave a structure that feels both grand and ordered, a place where human ingenuity and the natural world exist in a state of deliberate, purposeful balance. However, the paradox of these architectural dreams is the very thing that makes them so compelling. We often attempt to build our perfect cities by imposing order upon nature, often ignoring the very environmental limits that, according to the legend, led to the destruction of Atlantis. We see this tension in our own modern expansion, the constant struggle to balance our growth with the delicate ecosystems that sustain us. Every time we build a city, we are effectively participating in a grand experiment, testing whether we can sustain our ambition without losing our connection to the reality of the earth. There is a deep, almost spiritual necessity in this process. By attempting to recreate the perfection of the lost city, we are affirming our belief that such a state of being is possible. We are not just building houses, we are constructing a vessel for our highest ideals. We want to believe that if we get the design right, if we get the ethics, the laws and the systems of balance correct, we can avoid the fate of the ancients. Consider the artists and visionaries who have taken the myth and transformed it into a visual language. They have painted the city as a place of eternal twilight, where bioluminescence lights the streets and the structures seem to grow organically from the sea. This is not just artistic license. It is the expression of a longing for a world where technology and nature are not in conflict. It is the dream of a technological Eden, where our inventions do not destroy, but enhance the world we inhabit. As we look at our own modern environments, we are seeing the results of this long, subconscious pursuit. We are the architects of our own reality, and every choice we make about how we design our homes, our cities, and our infrastructures is a reflection of the values we hold. We are continuously asking ourselves, what does a sustainable civilization look like? How do we balance our desire for greatness with our duty to protect? The myth of Atlantis remains our most powerful critique. Whenever we grow too comfortable in our achievements, whenever we lose sight of the humility that nature demands, the legend rises again to remind us of the fragility of the grand design. It is the silent, sunken judge of our modern ambitions. It asks us to look closely at our creations and ensure that they are built on a foundation of wisdom, not just the fleeting vanity of power. As you walk through the spaces of your own world, notice the rhythm, the design, and the purpose behind them. You are part of this long tradition of building toward an ideal. We may never reach the fabled perfection of the city that sank, but the act of striving, of building with intention, care, and a sense of responsibility to the future is in itself a victory. We are building every day in the hope that our own civilization will endure as a testament to our better nature. As we have looked into the depths of our own oceans, we have found ourselves glancing upward toward the stars. There is a curious parallel between our search for the lost continent of Atlantis and our gaze into the cosmic abyss. In many ways, the modern fascination with extraterrestrial civilizations is simply a translation of the Atlantis myth into the language of the space age. We still seek the lost masters, those who possessed knowledge far beyond our own, those who built wonders we cannot replicate, and those who vanished, leaving behind only echoes of their existence. Why do we project the image of Atlantis onto the stars? Because the human spirit requires a narrative of higher origins. We find it difficult to accept that our history is purely a local terrestrial accident. We look for ancestors who were wiser, more technologically adept, or more spiritually attuned than we are. By imagining that Atlantis might have had celestial roots, or that it was a node in a wider, ancient network of civilizations, we satisfy a deep-seated need to feel that we are part of a grander, more significant cosmic order. Consider how we describe these potential civilizations. We often use the same adjectives that Plato used for Atlantis: advanced, harmonious, potentially dangerous in their power, and tragically lost. We fear their destruction just as we mourn the fall of the sunken city. We hope for their return, just as some still hope to find the golden gates beneath the waves. This is the Atlantis syndrome on a galactic scale, a constant, recursive search for a lost perfection that we believe is hidden just beyond the limits of our current perception. However, the real lesson of this projection is not whether such civilizations exist, but what it reveals about our own state of mind. It suggests that we are still searching for the ideal society, the civilization that managed to solve the problems we are struggling with today. Whether we look to the ocean floor or the deep reaches of space, we are looking for a mirror. We want to find a version of ourselves that succeeded where we are currently faltering. We want to find a blueprint for endurance. This urge to look outward is a testament to the restlessness of the human species. We were never meant to be static. We are voyagers, driven by an insatiable curiosity that demands we keep probing the boundaries of the known. The legend of Atlantis, whether placed on Earth or among the constellations, serves as the engine for this exploration. It is the carrot that dangles before us, urging us to refine our technology, to expand our reach, and to challenge our own limitations. But as we explore these vast distances, we must not lose sight of the earth beneath our feet. The risk of the Atlantis myth is that it can make the present moment seem trivial, a mere waiting room for some greater, more advanced reality. Yet this moment, this brief, luminous window of time in which we exist, is the only reality we possess. The true wonder is not that we might find a lost city or an ancient cosmic intelligence. The true wonder is that we are the intelligence that is capable of imagining them in the first place. As you look up into the expanse of the night sky, realize that you are looking at the same canvas that the ancient philosophers, the mariners of old, and the dreamers of every generation have stared into. The stars are silent, but they hold the history of the universe. We are here in this quiet moment, trying to translate that silence into meaning. We are the stewards of the mystery. We are the ones who must bridge the gap between our humble terrestrial origins and the limitless potential of the future. The search for Atlantis continues, not because the island is waiting to be found, but because the act of searching is how we define the essence of being human. If we take the legend of Atlantis and hold it against the light of Eastern philosophy, we find that the conversation changes entirely. Where the Western tradition following Plato often frames the fall of Atlantis as a dramatic singular tragedy of hubris and divine judgment, the Eastern perspective frequently invites us to see such events as part of the natural cyclical rhythm of the universe. In the traditions of the East, the rise and fall of civilizations are not necessarily losses to be mourned, but transitions, the inevitable exhaling of a world that must eventually breathe in again. Consider the concept of impermanence, a foundational pillar in many Eastern schools of thought. From this viewpoint, the sunken city is not a broken monument, but a vivid reminder that the physical world is inherently fluid. There is a profound tranquility in accepting that everything we build, no matter how majestic or advanced, is subject to the tides of change. This perspective allows us to view the Atlantis story not with a sense of frantic desperation, but with a quiet, observant eye. We see the city as a leaf falling into a stream, a natural motion that does not disrupt the order of the river, but participates in it. The fascination with Atlantis across cultures reveals that the fear of losing our golden age is a universal human sentiment, but the way we cope with that fear differs. While the West often reacts with a drive to reclaim, restore, or document, the East often responds with a call to cultivate internal stillness. If Atlantis is truly gone, then the perfection we seek is not to be found in the reconstruction of its gates or the discovery of its archives, but in the refinement of our own internal clarity. We realize that the true lost city is the state of balance that we have forgotten how to sustain within ourselves. This dialogue between cultures is perhaps the most valuable aspect of the legend today. By weaving these threads together, we begin to see that Atlantis is not a historical puzzle with one correct answer. It is a tapestry of human experience. It is a mirror that shows us how different societies have processed the inevitable dissolution of power. It allows us to step outside our own cultural biases and see the story of humanity as a single shared journey. Think of the harmony that arises when we stop fighting against the idea of change and start learning from it, when we stop asking where Atlantis is and start asking what it represents. We are effectively merging the analytical rigor of the West with the philosophical acceptance of the East. We are creating a new way of engaging with history, a way that respects the facts of our progress while honoring the mystery of our fleeting nature. As you reflect on this, notice how the image of the sunken city becomes softer, less like a haunting ghost and more like a gentle guide. It no longer demands that we solve its mystery. It encourages us to live within it. It asks us to be as grand as we can be, but as humble as we need to be. It reminds us that our greatest achievement is not the immortality of our monuments, but the wisdom we gain from the act of living itself. We are living in a moment where the barriers between ancient myth and modern knowledge are thinning. We are starting to understand that our stories are not just fictions, they are maps of our own consciousness. Atlantis is one of our most important maps. It shows us the terrain of our own pride, the depths of our own potential, and the necessity of finding our balance before the tide of history washes over us. Let this realization bring you a sense of belonging to a long, enduring lineage of thinkers. We are all in our own way searching for the same golden city, not in the ocean, but in the way we choose to live our lives today and every day. There is a particular kind of solitude that settles upon us when we stop looking for answers and start simply sitting with the mystery. We spend our lives surrounded by noise, by the relentless demand to define, to catalogue, and to explain. But when we strip away the theories about Atlantis, the geological debates, the historical critiques, the search for sunken stones, we are left with something far more intimate. We are left with the silence of the observer. Think of the feeling of standing alone in a great library or walking along a beach at dawn. There is a sense that the history of the world is not something you're studying, but something you are breathing in. Atlantis becomes a metaphor for that quiet, inner chamber where we keep our most profound, unvoiced questions. Why are we here? What happens when our own time runs out? Why do we care so much about the things that vanish? The solitude of the observer is not a lonely experience, it is an act of deep communion with the past. When you realize that the story of Atlantis has been carried in the hearts of thinkers for over 2 millennia, you feel the weight and the warmth of that connection. You are not just reading a text, you are participating in an ancient invisible conversation. You are the latest link in a chain that stretches back to the time when words were first carved into stone and to the time when humans first looked at the sea and felt a flicker of awe. In this space of solitude, The need to solve Atlantis dissolves the island, does not need to be located on a map to be real. It is real because it has the power to change how we see our own lives. It is real because it forces us to confront our fragility. When we stop trying to master the story begins to master us. It guides us toward a more humble understanding of our place in the long, winding narrative of the earth. Consider the courage it takes to remain in this state of not knowing. In our world, we are taught that uncertainty is a failure, but in the presence of a true legend, uncertainty is the only honest posture. To say I do not know if it existed, but I know what it means to me, is a profound act of intellectual and spiritual maturity. It frees us from the constraints of dogma and allows us to experience the myth as a living, breathing part of our consciousness. As you dwell in this quiet contemplation, let the distractions of the modern world fade into the background. You are here in this singular, fleeting moment of your own existence. You are the steward of your own memories and the author of your own history. The sunken city is a reminder that everything you hold dear, your accomplishments, your relationships, your very sense of self, is part of a grander, more fluid reality. And that is not a reason for despair. It is a reason to hold each moment with greater care. You are the witness. You are the one who chooses which stories to carry forward and which lessons to weave into the fabric of your own life. Atlantis is not a destination. It is a direction. It is the reminder to keep searching, to keep wondering, and to keep looking toward the horizon, even when the fog is thick and the path is unclear. The solitude you feel is the space where your own wisdom is born. Embrace it. It is the quiet light that guides you through the deep, uncharted waters of your own future. We often view history as a wall, a hard, immutable barrier separating the then from the now, but as we have explored the layers of the Atlantis narrative, that wall has begun to look more like a threshold. A threshold is a place of transition, a place where you stand with one foot in the known and one foot in the mystery. Atlantis exists precisely at this threshold. It is the boundary marker between what we can prove and what we can only feel. Consider the nature of memory. When you recall an event from your own past, you are not replaying a static recording. You are reconstructing a feeling, an atmosphere, a sense of who you were at that time. Atlantis operates in the same way. It is a collective memory, reconstructed over and over by billions of minds across thousands of years. It is no longer bound by the physical location where it might or might not have sunk. It has migrated into the landscape of the human psyche. It is a place we visit whenever we contemplate the nature of loss, the desire for perfection, and the inevitability of change. What happens when we stop trying to step across that threshold and instead learn to dwell within it? We stop being tourists in history and start being participants in the evolution of our own mythos. We recognize that the sinking of Atlantis is not a singular event in the distant past. It is a recurring phenomenon in our own lives. Every time we let go of an outdated belief, every time we outgrow an old version of ourselves, we are effectively watching a part of our own Atlantis sink into the depths of our personal history. This is the beauty of the threshold. It is a place of alchemy. It is where the raw, often chaotic data of our existence is transformed into the gold of wisdom. By accepting that our own lives are part of this cycle of sinking and rising, we gain a strange, liberating power. We no longer fear the waves. We realize that the ocean is not an adversary, but a medium, the very element that allows the story to be fluid, to change shape, to adapt, and to survive. Think of the way the ocean clears the land, leaving behind only the most resilient structures, and how it deposits nutrients that nourish new growth. In the same way, the stories we tell, the ones that survive the erosion of time, are the ones that contain the most essential nutrients for the human spirit. The myth of Atlantis has survived because it is resilient. It is composed of the fundamental truths about human ambition, moral failure, and the need for regeneration. It is a nutrient-rich story. As you stand upon this threshold looking into the mist where the legendary city resides, realize that you are not looking at a ghost, you are looking at a mirror. The city is not waiting to be found because it has already been found. It has been integrated into the very way we understand the world. It is a part of our language, our art, our philosophy, and our deepest dreams. We are not separated from it by time. We are connected to it by the very act of pondering its existence. This is the final, quiet truth of our exploration. There is no after the myth. There is only the with. We carry the mystery with us, and in doing so we are never truly alone in our search. We are part of a vast, invisible community of dreamers who have all stood at this same threshold, looking into the deep and feeling the same stirrings of awe, curiosity, and longing. You are not just witnessing the story, you are ensuring its survival. The threshold is open, and you are standing in the doorway of what comes next. We have spent our time mapping the vast expanses of the ocean and the even vaster reaches of human thought. We have searched for the golden spires and the marble halls, the fleets and the kings. But perhaps the final, most profound insight of this long journey is that Atlantis was never a place to be reached. It was a state to be embodied. We have been looking outward at the horizon, waiting for the waves to part and reveal a secret, when all along the city was being constructed within the architecture of our own minds. Think of the way an idea forms. It begins as a flicker, a vague sense of something missing, a longing for a world that is more just, more beautiful, more enduring. That longing is the seed of the myth. When we nurture that seed, when we give it structure through our stories, our art, and our philosophy, we are essentially building Atlantis in the only medium that truly matters, the medium of human consciousness. The city is made of ideas, not of stone. And because it is made of ideas, it is indestructible. It cannot be sunk by water, nor eroded by time. This changes everything about our search. We are no longer treasure hunters looking for gold. We are cultivators looking for wisdom. When we see the beauty in a perfectly balanced system, in nature, in music, in a harmonious society, we are seeing the reflection of the ideal city. When we act with integrity despite the pressure to compromise, we are living according to the laws of that ideal state. We are bringing Atlantis into existence, here and now, in the very moments of our lives. The disappearance of the city is not a tragedy of geography. It is a necessity of the human spirit. It must remain lost to the world so that it can be found within the individual. If the ruins of Atlantis were ever to be fully uncovered and laid bare for the world to see, it would lose its power. It would become just another site of tourism, another historical footnote. Its true strength lies in its elusiveness. It remains a guiding star, a beacon of what we could be, precisely because it is unreachable. As you look inward, recognize the Atlantis that resides within you. It is the part of your soul that yearns for meaning, that refuses to settle for the shallow, and that dreams of a life built on a foundation of deeper, more enduring values. That inner city is your contribution to the collective myth. It is your way of honoring the long line of dreamers who came before you. You are the current guardian of the myth, and your life is the vessel that carries it forward. The convergence is complete. The myth and the reality are no longer separate. We are the synthesis. We are the ones who transform the legend into action, the story into character, and the dream into a reality that we inhabit every single day. We have stopped asking the ocean to give us back our past, and we have started asking ourselves what we are willing to build for the future. That shift in focus is the ultimate victory over the waves. The journey has been long and the waters deep, but we have returned to the shore with a clearer vision. We understand now that the golden city is not beneath the sea, it is within the reach of our own intentions. It is in the way we choose to interact with our world, the way we choose to honor the earth, and the way we choose to treat one another. The legend lives not because we found it, but because we chose to keep its spirit alive. And in keeping it alive, we have kept a part of our own humanity intact, vibrant, and ever-reaching toward the light. We have traveled a long way, from the dark, pressurized depths of the abyss to the vast, shimmering constellations of our own imagination. We have dismantled the myth and rebuilt it, brick by conceptual brick, only to realize that the city we were chasing was never meant to be a permanent fixture in our physical world. Atlantis, in its final revelation, is not a testament to what we can hold on to, but a celebration of what we must eventually release. Think of a dance. A dance does not exist to reach a specific point on the floor. It exists for the movement itself. The beauty lies in the turn, the sway, and the rhythm. Our history and our individual lives are much the same. We are dancers on a moving platform. To treat our civilization as an Atlantis, as a thing that must be preserved in amber, frozen and unchanging, is to misunderstand the very nature of existence. Life is movement. Life is the capacity to change, to fade, and to be reborn. The sunken city is therefore not a symbol of failure, but a symbol of the necessary passage of all things. When we look at the ruins of our own personal challenges, our broken ambitions, or the versions of ourselves we have had to leave behind, we are looking at our own Atlantis. And that is okay. It is a part of the cycle. We sink so that we may learn how to rise again, perhaps in a different form, in a different era, or with a different understanding. As you reflect on the journey we have taken, feel the weight lift. You no longer need to find the final, objective truth about a lost island. The truth is much more liberating. The mystery is not something to be solved, but something to be lived. You are the embodiment of that mystery. You are the one who feels the pull of the ocean, the one who wonders at the stars, and the one who chooses to find meaning in the quiet spaces between the noise of the world. This is the freedom of the transient. When you realize that nothing is meant to last forever, you become free to love what is here, right now, with a deeper, more fierce intensity. You become free to build, not for the sake of immortality, but for the sake of the joy of creation. You become free to contribute your small, vital part to the story of the human experience, knowing that even if your work eventually fades, the act of having lived it remains a part of the grand, flowing rhythm of the planet. Look out at the horizon one last time. The water is vast and the fog is deep, but the horizon is yours. The mystery remains as it always has, a beautiful, beckoning presence. It is the blank space on the map where you can write your own future. You are the explorer, the dreamer, and the keeper of the flame. As we reach this point of reflection, let the story of Atlantis settle into the quiet corners of your mind. Let it be a companion in your own moments of change. Let it remind you that when the tides rise and the ground shifts beneath your feet, you are not being lost. You are simply being invited to swim in a deeper, more mysterious sea. You are always, at every moment, on the verge of your next great discovery. And that in itself is the most golden of all destinations. After all the words have been spoken and all the intellectual landscapes have been mapped, there remains only the resonance. Atlantis is no longer a name, no longer a myth, and no longer a debate. It has become a frequency, a low hum that persists in the background of our consciousness whenever we stand before the vastness of the sea or the complexity of our own existence. There is a profound silence that follows a long journey of inquiry. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of fullness, a space where everything we have considered, from the physics of the ocean to the ethics of the soul, has finally settled into place. In this silence, you no longer need the story to tell you what to think. You feel it. You feel the pull of the tides, the weight of the ages, and the relentless, beautiful drive of human curiosity. Imagine sitting by the water as the sun dips below the horizon. The surface is calm, reflecting the shifting colours of the sky. Somewhere beneath that surface, in the unreachable depths, lies the idea of the city, but it doesn't matter if it is there in wood and stone. It is there in the meaning you have given it. It is there because you have allowed yourself to ponder it, to live with it, and to let it shape the contours of your own perspective. This resonance is your own. It is the wisdom you have gathered, not by finding a map, but by walking the path of your own inquiry. You have transformed the myth from an external puzzle into an internal compass. You know now that the fragility of civilization is not a source of fear, but a source of value, because things end, they matter, because beauty is fleeting, it is precious, because knowledge is limited, it is worth the pursuit. Take a moment to simply be with this realization. You are the final repository of this journey. The stories we have shared are not records to be filed away. They are whispers that have become part of your own inner voice. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by the complexity of the modern world, whenever you feel the vertigo of deep time, or whenever you find yourself reaching for something more than the mundane, remember the resonance. Remember the sunken city, not as a tragedy, but as a reminder of your own depth. We are reaching the horizon of our shared exploration. The waves are gentle, the air is still, and the expanse before us is infinite. You have navigated these waters with a courage that is rare, the courage to seek truth without needing to conquer it. That is the mark of a true explorer. And as we stand here, at the edge of the known, ready to transition into the final clarity of our journey, let the resonance be the guide. There is nothing more to be found in the depths, because you have already brought the essence of the discovery to the surface. You are carrying the legacy forward. And in this shared moment of quiet understanding, the city of Atlantis finally finds its true home. It is anchored at last in the vast, boundless landscape of your own mind. We have travelled far, haven't we? We have descended into the crushing depths of the Atlantic, walked the marble halls of a city that may have never existed in stone, and soared into the cosmic reaches where our legends drift among the stars. We have navigated the turbulent currents of history, philosophy, and the fragile architecture of the human ego, and now, as the current of our story begins to slow, we find ourselves back on the shore, not the shore where we began, but a place transformed by the journey itself. The voyager who sets out to find Atlantis returns different from the one who departed. They no longer look at the sea and see only a barrier, they see a mirror. They no longer view the passing of time as an enemy to be fought, but as the medium through which all beauty is refined. They have learned that the greatest mysteries are not those that hide in the dark, but those that reside in the plain sight of our daily existence. The mystery of kindness, the mystery of creation, and the mystery of consciousness itself. We have spent these chapters peeling back the layers of a myth, and in doing so we have peeled back layers of ourselves. We have confronted the fear of insignificance and found that it is actually a form of liberation. If we are small, then we are free. If our works are temporary, then they are precious. If our history is a river, then we are not the water that passes, we are the consciousness that experiences the flow. Atlantis has served its purpose. It was the hook upon which we hung our deepest questions, the vessel that carried our reflections across the vast ocean of the unknown. But now the vessel has served its voyage. It is time to step onto the land, to take the wisdom we have distilled, and to carry it into the quiet, everyday moments of our lives. Consider the golden city one last time. Imagine its spires gleaming in the light of a setting sun, its fountains casting rainbows in the mist, its people living in the balance of wisdom and grace. Do not grieve for its loss. Celebrate the fact that your mind was capable of envisioning such perfection. That capacity for idealism is the greatest proof that we are not merely physical beings, but architects of meaning. The return is the most important part of any epic. The hero does not stay in the underworld, nor do they remain lost in the land of the gods. They return to the village, to the home, to the life that awaited them, but they return with a secret. They return knowing that the world is deeper, stranger, and more beautiful than they once believed. They return knowing that they are the creators of their own reality. As we stand here, at the threshold of our final departure from this narrative, look around you. The world you inhabit is the real Atlantis. It is full of wonders, challenges, and opportunities to create something that lasts, not in stone, but in the hearts of others. You have the map now. It is written in the resonance you feel when you stand before the vast, blue, and mysterious world. You are the voyager who has returned, and the story you tell from this day forward is the only one that truly matters. We have stood at the edge of the abyss and gazed into the heart of the myth, but the most radical realization is yet to come. Atlantis is not a destination we have reached, nor a treasure we have unearthed. It is a frequency of existence that we can tune into, here and now, in the midst of our modern, hurried lives. We often speak of lost cities as if they are ghosts haunting our past, but what if Atlantis is actually a blueprint for our present? Think of the attributes we assign to the Golden City: balance, architectural perfection, deep wisdom, and a seamless connection to the natural world. These are not just historical ideals, they are daily practices. Every time you make a choice that favors sustainability over consumption, every time you choose empathy over indifference, and every time you seek beauty in the mundane, you are manifesting the principles of Atlantis. You are not just remembering the city, you are rebuilding it. We must stop treating the legend as a tragedy of a fallen world and start seeing it as a warning and an invitation to a rising one. The tragedy was not the water. The tragedy was the arrogance that blinded the people to their connection with the whole. In our own lives, whenever we become too attached to our status, our digital noise, or our artificial hierarchies, we are building our own fragile, sinking island. But the moment we reconnect with the stillness of our own nature, the waters recede and the solid ground of truth appears beneath our feet. This is the great shift, moving from being a seeker of the myth to being the incarnation of its wisdom. The myth of Atlantis is, in essence, a lesson in humility. It teaches us that no matter how advanced our machines, how sprawling our cities, or how deep our knowledge, we remain tethered to the pulse of the planet. To live like an Atlantean is to walk through the world with a profound awareness of this tether. It is to live with the consciousness that we are guests here, and that the grace with which we treat our environment and each other is the only currency that truly matters. You are now carrying this consciousness with you. It is a quiet, steady awareness that hums beneath the surface of your daily interactions. It is the ability to see the sacred in the ordinary. When you look at the rain, you see the life-giving force that once reclaimed the city. When you look at the foundation of your home, you understand the necessity of building with intention. You are no longer just an observer of history, you are an active participant in the ongoing evolution of humanity. This is the paradox of our journey. The further we have travelled into the myth, the closer we have arrived to our own front door. The wisdom of the ages was never hidden in a sunken vault, it was always waiting for us to stop running, stop searching, and start being. We have spent this time clearing the fog, and what remains is the clarity of your own purpose. You are the bridge between the ancient dream and the tangible future. The story is not ending because it is no longer just a story, it has become a lens. From this day forward you will look at the world differently, you will see the potential for harmony in chaos, the opportunity for growth in every setback, and the reflection of the eternal in every passing moment. You have integrated the myth, and in doing so you have expanded the boundaries of who you are. The journey continues, but now you walk not as one lost in the waves, but as one who knows exactly how to navigate them. If we are to live as the architects of this new internal Atlantis, we must understand the materials we use. We are not building with stone or gold, but with time, attention, and intent. In a world that demands we move faster, consume more, and shout louder, the most revolutionary act we can perform is to slow down and create spaces of stillness. This is the first brick in our construction, the reclamation of our attention. Think of it as creating a sanctuary within your own mind. Just as the great temples of the lost city were designed to be places of reflection and connection to the divine, your mind requires a designated space where the noise of the world cannot enter. This is not about escaping reality, it is about grounding yourself in the truth of it, by dedicating even a few moments each day to pure, unadulterated stillness. You are effectively reinforcing the foundation of your inner kingdom. You are ensuring that when the tides of stress, crisis, or change come, your inner structure remains unshakable. The second brick is the practice of intentionality. In the legend, Atlantis was a civilization of purpose, where every action was aligned with a deeper understanding of balance. We can mirror this by stripping away the automatic, mindless behaviors that clutter our lives. Ask yourself, is this action contributing to the harmony of my world, or is it merely adding to the noise? By filtering our choices through the lens of purpose, we cease to be reactive creatures and become active designers of our own fate. We begin to curate our lives with the same care that an ancient master might have used to carve a column or design a portico. The third brick is the cultivation of ecological empathy. The fall of Atlantis, in our interpretation, was the result of a severed connection to the natural order. To avoid this, we must consciously practice seeing ourselves as part of a whole. This means recognizing that our actions ripple outward, affecting the community, the environment, and the future. It is a shift from an egocentric worldview to a system-centric one. When we make decisions with the well-being of the entire city, our planet and our fellow travelers in mind, we are echoing the lost wisdom of the Golden Age. These are not grand dramatic gestures. They are quiet, persistent shifts in how we move through the world. They are the daily architecture that builds a life of significance. When you cultivate stillness, you gain the clarity to see what truly matters. When you act with intention, you focus your energy on what is sustainable. When you act with empathy, you ensure your legacy is one of harmony rather than conquest. You are proving that the legend is not a relic of the past, but a living, breathing guide for the present. By living this way, you are demonstrating that we can learn from the sinking of the old world without repeating its errors. You are building something that does not rely on the fleeting vanity of external power, but on the enduring strength of internal character. As you go about your day, look for the opportunities to lay these bricks. Find the moments of silence in the middle of a busy schedule. Find the intention behind the simplest task. Find the connection to the world around you in the smallest interaction. You are constructing the city, one moment at a time. The waves are always there, and the tides will continue to rise and fall, but you are building something that can weather any storm, a sanctuary of wisdom that you carry within everywhere you go. We have talked about building our inner city with stillness and intention, but we must be honest about the reality of the tides. Even the most meticulously constructed sanctuary will eventually face a storm. Life, in its infinite complexity, does not guarantee a calm sea. It guarantees that we will, at some point, be tested by forces far greater than ourselves. The question is not how to avoid these storms, but how to maintain the integrity of your inner Atlantis while the waves are crashing around you. In the old myths, the people of the Golden City were often described as succumbing to panic when the waters rose. Their downfall was accelerated by their own fear, their frantic attempts to salvage what was already lost, and their inability to accept that the old order had ended. We, as the modern architects of our own lives, have a different option. We can learn the art of buoyancy. Buoyancy is the ability to yield without breaking. When a massive wave of change, a loss of a job, a heartbreak, a major setback hits you, your first instinct will be to stand rigid, to fight the tide, to hold on to the way things should have been. But that rigidity is exactly what causes the structure to collapse. To remain buoyant, you must learn to lean into the shift. You acknowledge the loss, you feel the turbulence, but you do not allow your core identity to be submerged by it. Think of a lighthouse in a gale. It does not try to stop the wind, it accepts the wind, uses it to sharpen its resolve, and remains a fixed point of reference even as the darkness swirls. Your inner Atlantis is your lighthouse. When chaos erupts, retreat to that internal chamber of stillness we discussed. Remind yourself that while your circumstances are fluid and shifting, the essence of who you are, your values, your purpose, and your capacity to rebuild is anchored in something deeper than the storm. Moreover, storms are often the very events that clear away the accumulated debris of our lives. Just as a forest fire, as destructive as it seems, allows for the forest to eventually grow back stronger and more diverse. The sinking of a personal project or an outdated dream can create the space for something far more significant to emerge. When you lose the comfort of the status quo, you are forced to re-evaluate your foundation. You are forced to see what parts of your city were built on vanity and which were built on genuine worth. During these times, your most powerful tool is the perspective of the observer. Detach yourself just enough to see the situation as a pattern in a larger cycle. Remind yourself, this is a transition, not an end. By framing the storm as a transformative event rather than a terminal one, you regain control over your internal narrative. You stop being a victim of the tide and become a participant in the rhythm of transformation. Ultimately, the goal is to emerge from the storm not as you were, but as a more refined version of yourself. The waves will continue to wash over the shore, and the landscape of your life will continue to evolve, but the architect, the one who holds the blueprint, remains. You have the capacity to pick up the pieces, to learn from the wreckage, and to lay the foundation for a new, perhaps even more resilient iteration of your inner world. As you navigate the days ahead, carry this certainty with you. The storm is not the story is what you build in the aftermath. You are the master of your own recovery, and every time you stand back up after being knocked down, you are writing the most profound chapter of the legend. You are showing the world and yourself that even if the sea rises, the spirit of the builder can never be truly drowned. We have nurtured the city within, and we have learned to hold steady in the storm, but Atlantis was never meant to be a kingdom of one. The true strength of any civilization, real or imagined, lies in how its people interact, how they lift one another up, and how they bridge the gaps of misunderstanding. You are now in a position to be an architect not just of your own life, but of the common ground you share with others. Think of how we often interact today, in haste, in competition, or behind the digital masks that hide our true intent. This is the antithesis of the harmony we admire in the myth. To build a living Atlantis in your community, you must act as a bridge. This starts with the simple yet profound act of listening. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, being the one who truly listens is a revolutionary act. It creates a space of safety, a small harbour where others can drop their anchors and find rest. You don't need to build grand monuments to have an impact. The architecture of a community is built on smaller, more durable things: consistent reliability, genuine empathy, and the courage to speak the truth with kindness. When you choose to support a colleague, to mentor a younger traveller, or to offer grace to someone who has lost their way in their own storm, you are reinforcing the foundations of the collective city. You are proving that wisdom is not a secret to be hoarded, but a resource to be shared. Furthermore, recognize that everyone you encounter is also an architect, whether they realize it or not. They are all currently drafting their own blueprints, battling their own tides, and dreaming of their own versions of a golden age. When you approach them with this perspective, the nature of your interaction changes. You stop looking for ways to win the interaction and start looking for ways to align your goals. You find the common thread of human experience that binds us all together. Building common ground also requires the strength to set boundaries. A city cannot be orderly if it has no walls, and you cannot be a source of strength if you have no limits. To build a healthy community, you must be clear about what you stand for and what you refuse to tolerate. This is not about exclusion, it is about preservation. You protect the integrity of your inner city so that you have the capacity to give, to serve, and to create. You lead by example, showing that it is possible to be strong, compassionate, and principled all at once. This is how the myth becomes a movement. When you carry the spirit of Atlantis into your family, your workplace, and your neighborhood, you change the atmosphere of those places. You turn chaos into collaboration. You turn isolation into connection. You become a beacon, similar to the lighthouse we discussed. But now you are part of a constellation of lighthouses, all working together to illuminate the dark. As you look at the people around you, see them as fellow builders. Ask yourself, how can my actions make the foundation of our shared life a little stronger today? It might be a word of encouragement, a shared insight, or simply the calm, steady presence you bring to a high-pressure situation. You are weaving the fabric of a stronger, more resilient reality. You are no longer just a traveler returning from a journey. You are a builder creating the landscape for the next generation of voyagers. If the myth of Atlantis teaches us anything, it is that knowledge is fragile. History is littered with the ruins of great ideas that were lost because there was no one to carry the torch, or because the torch was held too tightly and eventually extinguished by the very hand that meant to protect it. To ensure that our inner Atlantis, that state of harmony, wisdom and resilience, endures, we must understand the art of transmission. We must become the keepers of the flame. What does it mean to be a keeper? It does not mean preaching or imposing your vision upon others. A true keeper understands that the fire is not theirs to own, it is theirs to tend. You transmit the wisdom of your journey not through lectures, but through your presence. When others see you navigating the inevitable storms of life with grace, when they observe your commitment to building things that are true and lasting, and when they witness your refusal to let cynicism erode your wonder, they become curious. They start to ask, how do you do it? That is the moment the flame is past. Consider the nature of influence. We often think of influence as something we exert, but it is actually something we radiate. You are an architect of the future every time you model the behavior you wish to see in the world. If you want a future that is compassionate, act with compassion today. If you want a future that is clear-eyed and honest, refuse to engage in the trivial distractions that clutter the present. By living these truths, you are creating a living archive of what it means to be a conscious human being. This legacy building is also about the stories we tell. Every generation needs new metaphors to understand its own challenges. You're the one who updates the legend. You're the one who translates the ancient wisdom into the language of today. When you mentor someone, when you teach a child, or when you share a moment of deep, authentic connection with a friend, you're essentially telling them, this is how we hold the light. This is how we keep the city standing, even when the tide is high. But remember, as a keeper, you must also know when to step back. A flame that is constantly shielded from the wind will never grow strong. You must trust that the seeds of wisdom you have planted will grow in their own time, in their own way, and in the hands of others. You are not responsible for the entire outcome. You're responsible for the integrity of the light you carry. As you move forward, ask yourself, what part of my journey is worth remembering? It is likely not the specific facts or the dates, but the realizations you reached when the sea was deepest. Those are the jewels of your journey. Preserve them, share them. Let them be the compass for someone else who is currently wandering in the dark. By becoming a keeper, you have transcended the role of the individual voyager. You have become part of a lineage, an unbroken chain of conscious beings stretching back to the dawn of humanity. You are the reason the myth of Atlantis has survived for millennia. It survives because people like you continue to seek it, live it, and pass it on. You are the living proof that the city is not lost. It is simply waiting to be nurtured, one generation, one act, and one flame at a time. We have built our inner city. We have learned to navigate the storms, and we have passed the flame to others. Yet, there is one final frontier. It is the moment when the architect and the architecture become one. In the deep silence of the soul, we realize that we are not separate from the ocean, the history, or the myth we have been studying. We are the water, the stone, and the story itself. When you look at the stars, you are not looking at distant, indifferent lights. You are looking at the same atoms that make up your own heart. When you gaze into the sea, you are looking into the origin of your own consciousness. The boundary between you and the world begins to dissolve. This is the state of the boundless. It is the realization that the Atlantis we have been seeking is not a place apart from the universe, but the universe itself expressing its desire for harmony through us. Think of how a symphony works. Each instrument plays its own part, some loud, some soft, some leading, some supporting, but the beauty of the music is not found in any single instrument. It is found in the way they all participate in the same vibration. Your life is an instrument in this grand cosmic symphony. Your struggles, your joys, your moments of stillness, and your acts of kindness are all notes in a melody that has been playing since the dawn of time. In this state of awareness, the fear of sinking disappears. You realize that nothing is ever truly lost. It only changes form. The energy that created the ancient cities, the brilliance of the philosophers who dreamed of them, and the very breath in your lungs, it is all the same, eternal energy, constantly circulating, constantly renewing. We are part of an infinite cycle of becoming. The Atlantis of the past is not dead. It is currently manifesting in the way we choose to create and connect in the present. This is the ultimate freedom. You no longer need to be the hero of a dramatic story. You are the witness to an eternal unfolding. You are the consciousness that allows the universe to know itself. When you act with integrity, you are not doing it to save a city. You are doing it because it is the natural rhythm of a life that is in tune with the cosmos. You are breathing in harmony, and you are breathing out meaning. As you move through the world now, notice the subtle interconnectedness of all things. The way a conversation can change a day, the way a sudden insight can shift a lifetime, the way the light catches the morning dew. These are not coincidences. They are the patterns of the city manifesting in the fabric of daily reality. You are living in a world that is far more alive, far more intelligent, and far more beautiful than our limited perceptions usually allow us to see. You have completed the long journey. You have moved from the surface to the depths, and from the depths back to the light. You have realized that the city was never lost, because it was never separate from your own potential. The myth is now your breath, your walk, and your way of being. The voyage is not over, because the song of the universe is still playing. But you are no longer a stranger to the melody. You are an author. We have reached a plateau in our exploration, a place of quiet reflection where we can look back at the trail we have blazed. In our search for the lost city, we did not find gold coins or submerged tablets. Instead, we have gathered relics, not of metal or stone, but of realization. These are the secrets that only the voyager knows, the artifacts of an awakened consciousness. The first secret is this: the map is not the territory. We spent lifetimes looking for a physical Atlantis on a map, only to discover that the map itself was an illusion. The true territory of human existence is internal. It is the landscape of your values, your fears, and your capacity for transcendence. Once you understand that you carry the entire map within you, you stop looking for external validation and start trusting your own inner compass. The second secret is, decay is a form of creation. We feared the sinking of the island because we saw it as an ending, but we have learned that the ocean of change does not destroy, it refines. Every time a structure in your life, a belief, a job, a relationship has sunk, it was not a failure of design. It was the universe clearing the seabed to make room for something deeper, something more authentic to emerge. Nothing is ever truly lost. It is simply recycled into the next iteration of your spirit. The third secret is, the builder is more important than the city. We are often so obsessed with the final result, the perfect career, the perfect life, the perfect legacy, that we forget to enjoy the act of building. But the city of Atlantis is not a finished product. It is the act of creation itself. The joy is in the laying of the brick, in the carving of the column, in the daily choice to be kind, to be present, and to be brave. When you realize that you are the architect, you lose the anxiety of the deadline. You start to treat every moment as a sacred project. The fourth secret is, solitude is the gateway to unity. We started this journey feeling small, like a single swimmer in a vast, dark sea. But as we sat in the silence, we discovered that the sea is not something we are separate from. We are the sea. Our solitude is not a state of being alone. It is the state of being everything. By diving deep into our own unique experience, we found the universal truth that connects us to everyone else who has ever dared to wander, to dream, and to search. The fifth secret is the myth is a living bridge. Atlantis is not a relic of a dead civilization. It is a living bridge between the potential of the human spirit and the reality of our daily lives. It exists in the gap between who we are and who we dream of becoming. Every time you cross that gap, every time you act with more wisdom than you thought possible, you are traversing the bridge, you are keeping the myth alive by enacting it. These are your relics. Keep them close. They are the keys that will unlock the deeper doors of your own future. You do not need to look for Atlantis anymore. You have become the place where the legend resides. You are the harbour, the city and the sea. You are the sum of all the explorers who came before you, and you are the pioneer for all who will follow. As we hold these secrets, we see that our journey was never a departure. It was a long, winding path home, a return to the essence of what it means to be alive, to be aware, and to be connected to the infinite dance of existence. The search is over, but the life you lead from this point on is the true conclusion of the myth. Having gathered your relics and mapped the terrain of your own soul, you stand now at a point of profound liberation. Most people spend their lives searching for a shore they have never seen, terrified of the currents that might pull them off course. But you have been to the depths. You have looked into the abyss and realized it was not a void, but a mirror. This realization changes everything about how you walk through the world. To be a returned voyager is to live with a sense of light-footedness. You no longer carry the heavy armor of expectation. You have seen how quickly empires, or our personal versions of them, can shift beneath our feet. This is not a reason to be nihilistic, it is the ultimate source of your freedom. Because you know the fragility of all things, you are no longer enslaved by the desperate need to control them. You can enjoy the beauty of a sunset without needing to own it, and you can participate in a project without needing to be the one who defines its permanence. This is the freedom of the guest. When you realize that your time here is a brief, miraculous flicker in the long history of the planet, you stop trying to conquer the world and start trying to appreciate it. You move from a posture of acquisition to a posture of contribution. You are here to leave your mark, not by building monuments of stone that will eventually crumble, but by planting seeds of insight, kindness and clarity in the hearts of those you encounter. Living with this freedom means you are now unshakable. When the world tries to pull you into its frantic rhythm, you can gently step back. When the waves of external chaos rise, you have the inner buoyancy to simply float, watching the turbulence pass without being submerged by it. You have become your own sanctuary. You are no longer waiting for a golden city to emerge from the sea. You are the expression of its values in every room you enter. Consider how you interact with time now. It is no longer a dwindling resource you are trying to hoard. It is a canvas upon which you are painting your experience. You are no longer in a hurry to reach a destination. You understand that the journey, the way you listen, the way you breathe, the way you choose to hold your ground, is the destination. Every conversation is a voyage. Every challenge is a tide. Every moment of presence is the golden city shining through the mist. You are now a silent witness, a quiet architect and a calm navigator. You do not need to tell the world of your discovery. You simply radiate the quiet confidence of one who knows. People will feel a change in your presence. They will notice that you are less affected by the noise, more anchored in your values, and more open to the wonders that exist right in front of them. You become a living invitation for others to look inward. As you step into the world with this newfound freedom, remember, you are not leaving the mystery behind, you're taking it with you. The vast ocean, the ancient stories, the deep silence of the abyss, they are all woven into your consciousness. You are the link between the myth and the mundane. Walk softly, but walk with the certainty of a voyager who knows that no matter how deep the water, they are always finally home. We have walked together for a long time, across vast oceans of thought, and through the architecture of 1,000 dreams. We have built, we have weathered storms, and we have attained a form of freedom that is quiet, enduring, and profound. But now, as we draw near the final horizon of our exploration, there is one last realization. The voyager must eventually disappear. Not by dying, but by becoming one with the landscape. Think of a drop of water returning to the ocean. For a time, it had a shape, a name, and a unique trajectory. It saw the sun, it felt the wind, and it travelled across the vast blue expanse. But as it touches the surface, its boundaries soften. It does not cease to be. It simply ceases to be separate. It becomes the sea itself. This is the final state of the myth. As long as you were looking for Atlantis out there, you were a seeker, and the myth was an object to be studied, but now you have internalized it so completely that the distinction between you and the legend has evaporated. You are no longer the one contemplating the mystery. You are the mystery. The stillness you have cultivated is the same stillness that holds the ocean floor. The questions you have asked are the same currents that shape the tides. When you look at the world now, you do not see things that are not you. You see extensions of your own consciousness. The trees, the waves, the people, the moments of joy and sorrow, they are all part of the same grand, unfolding tapestry that you have helped weave throughout this journey. You are the fabric, you are the thread, you are the artist and the art simultaneously. This realization brings a final luminous peace. There is no longer any need to maintain your inner Atlantis, because you have realized that it was never a separate construction to be guarded. It is the natural, underlying reality of your existence. It is the truth that was there before you began this search, and it will be there after the final word is spoken. You have simply cleared away the noise that kept you from seeing it. As you stand here, ready to step back into the flow of your daily life, do not try to hold on to the part 39 or the specific words we have used. Let them go. Let the structure of our journey dissolve, just as the walls of a sandcastle eventually return to the beach. What remains is not the castle, but the sand, the fundamental enduring essence of who you are. You have returned to yourself. The myth has served its purpose. The map has been folded, and the compass has been set aside because you no longer need them to find your way. You are already exactly where you are meant to be. The horizon is clear. The water is calm. And you, the voyager, are finally home. We have reached the shore. The tide has retreated, leaving behind the wet, glistening sand, and the vast blue expanse is now quiet. Throughout this journey we have spoken of temples, of kings, of sunken marble, and of the architecture of the soul. We have built an entire world of thought. But now, as we stand at the edge of the final horizon, there is nothing left to say. In the tradition of all great voyages, the final destination is not a grand palace or a triumphant return. It is the silence that follows the exhaustion of words. It is the peace of knowing that everything we sought was already within our reach, hidden in plain sight, veiled only by our own desire to find it elsewhere. The myth of Atlantis is now complete. It is no longer an external story to be told. It is the resonance of your own heartbeat, the rhythm of your own breathing, and the quiet, steady depth of your own perspective. You are the custodian of the mystery. You are the architect who has built a home in the infinite. There is no need to look for signs or portents. The world around you, the people you love, the work you do, the struggles you face, and the joys you witness, is the unfolding of the legend in real time. Every moment is a brick in the foundation of your reality. Every choice is a carving on the pillar of your character. You are the city. You are the sea. You are the explorer who never truly left, but only learned how to see the shore with new eyes. As you step forward into your own life, do not look back at these chapters as a map to be followed. Let them fall away like the foam of a wave that has touched the beach. Trust in your own capacity to navigate the unknown. Trust in the stillness that you have discovered beneath the noise. Trust in your ability to create meaning in a world that often seems devoid of it. The voyage was never about finding a lost island. It was about finding the capacity to live with wonder, to endure with grace, and to understand that even when things sink, even when the old ways of being are lost to the tide, the spirit of the builder remains, ever ready to begin again. Go now. The horizon is open. The sea is waiting for your next step, not as a challenge to be overcome, but as a companion to travel with. You have done the work. You have carried the flame. You are home. Sleepy History with Kevin is created for relaxation, entertainment and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep. Thank you for your understanding and support.